Okay, so finally, Abducted in Plain Sight is a film that one of our programmers saw at the Oxford Film Festival in Mississippi, right? Yeah, and just showed it and said, hey, look at this, and we were all just like, yes, we're gonna do it. We were already kind of heavier than we'd ever been on documentaries, but this one just sort of blew us away, so we wanted to include it. And like we said, like we're all about kids in danger this year, so let's bring it. And let's bring Skye Borgman out, the director of the film, say a few words. So we'll be back for a Q&A after.
Hi, I just want to thank everybody for coming out and thank Chicago Critics Film Festival. I think this is an amazing festival, an amazing venue, and the programming is out of this world, right? So, and thank you all for coming, because this is a tough film to watch, but I think it's an important film, and I think our message is really to start the conversation. So that's what we'll do afterwards, so come back and we'll have a Q&A, and there are always lots of questions, believe me. It takes a little bit to sort of get ramped up because you sit there a little shocked afterwards, but all questions are welcome, so bring them on. Thank you very much. Hi everyone, thanks for sticking around for the little hiccup we had. I'd also like to get Stephanie Tobey up here. She's a producer on the film.
Hello. Welcome. I will admit that when I watched this film the first time when it was first presented as a possibility of screening here, I wasn't really sure who in the film I was more angry at. The parents or, well, I knew who I was a little more angry at, but there's a lot of anger to go around. Just talk about like how did you, let's start from the beginning, how did you even hear about this and find out about this story?
Testing, yeah. So I came across the story, I came across the book, Stolen Innocence, that Marianne and Jan had written. Basically, I worked in an office that Jan had previously had the position that I was doing and left her book on the shelf, and I read it. And I couldn't put it down. I felt like I was reading her to safety. I knew she survived and thrived. It wasn't until a year later that 3 girls got found after being kidnapped for over a decade in Cleveland, Ohio, if you guys remember that story. The day they got found, I called Jan, and I wanted to do something. I wanted to volunteer somewhere. I didn't want this to happen to anybody else. And she said, well, think of how many people we can reach by telling our story. So Skye and I had previously worked together. She read the book and was obsessed with it like I was, trying to figure out how this could happen. And she came on board, and that's how it started.
Was it tough convincing the other members of the family to be a part of this? Because clearly this is not something, I mean, it's already in a book, but a book reaches a certain amount of people. A movie certainly has potential to reach a lot more. And it's a lot less of a time commitment to watch a 90-minute movie. But did it take some convincing to get everyone on board?
There's also a lot more distance with the book. I mean, you can put it out there and nobody knows what you look like, you know, and,
right.
And you can have this story told and not have people recognize you. So, so it is a much larger commitment. But honestly, the Brobergs were, and still are, very committed to saving lives, and that's what their main goal is, and that always has been their goal in telling their story in the book and in the documentary, is trying to put the story out there to tell about their mistakes so that hopefully somebody who sees it or reads it can learn something from it and not make the same mistakes that they did. But truthfully, it was after the conversation with Jan, and she met with us and we spent time with her, and she really sort of brought us into her family and felt good about us telling her story, and she was critical. If Jan hadn't trusted us, then we would have never been able to get to the family.
Yeah. I know every time I watch a movie like this that I could never be a documentary filmmaker because I would just be so judgmental about some of these, what I'm seeing. And you do a remarkable job of trying not to judge too harshly the family members in particular. And was that something you had to, like, did you have to sort of self-correct every once in a while and make sure that you took all of that out, and what was the process there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you go down this road and then you get filled with so much frustration and anger and sadness, and you really, I was really committed, and James, our editor too, we were both just very committed to not judging. I mean, we've never been through a situation like that, and so I can only sort of guess at what it must be like. And so, yeah, they absolutely made mistakes, but it was really important for us, I think, to just kind of let the story play out so that as many people can hear the story as possible, because I feel like as soon as somebody starts kind of preaching to me or telling me how I'm supposed to feel or act, I stop listening, and I didn't want people to stop listening.
One of the most remarkable things you do is you're in addition to telling the story of this family, you're really trying to capture. The only way you can really do it successfully is to capture the personality of this con man who is seducing and just persuading at a level that is unheard of. And he's not. You don't have an interview with him. He's not only represented mostly in photos. And so how did you go about like trying to capture? We need to know him to a certain degree to get what's going on here. And how did you go about, with limited resources, capturing him?
Yeah, it was challenging because when we first started editing, we had 6 pictures or less. And it was a constant struggle to try to build this character. And I have to say, we got so lucky when we got the FBI documents and the court transcripts and those audio tapes. Because the audio tapes, I even just got chills now saying it, as soon as we heard it for the first time, we were just like, oh my God. And it just sort of created this character for us, and we were able to use those to try to build who he was.
This is told against a religious backdrop, and again, I think he used that to his advantage. The trust, like once you're in this particular religion, once you're sort of in, you're in, and you just have to be trusted, and it's almost bad to stop trusting somebody once you sort of let them in like that. Again, how you don't point the finger at the religion, but it plays a factor in this. And how did you sort of weave that into this story?
Yeah, I mean, there were certainly a lot of times where we wanted to go deeper into the LDS religion and patriarchal institutions and religion in general, and every time we started digging deeper into that, it was this rabbit hole where we would just go down, and it was just deeper and deeper and deeper, and it just was so hard, or maybe even impossible for us at least, to conceive of a way to kind of get it back to the story of this family. And I didn't want it to be a movie about pedophilia in the Mormon church. I think it doesn't just happen in the Mormon church. I mean, all of us know that it's happening all over. It's happening in patriarchal institutions, in universities, in the NFL. I mean, it happens everywhere, So I didn't want it to be about that. There are times certainly where I go, gosh, I wish we could have delved a little bit deeper into it. But there's also, to do that justice would have taken quite a bit more time, and so we finally sort of ended up on trying to find this balance.
You've kind of, ideally, in terms of the timing of this film, you've hit this era. I mean, we are in an era now that we're like serialized true crime podcasts and stuff, the Netflix series and other places are really hot right now. And I like that. Thank you, by the way, for condensing it to 90 minutes, because you probably could have gone 4 hours with this if you really wanted to. But there is something to be said for a brief version of this as well, and it's certainly a little bit more consumable. But just talk about, was that ever even a consideration to make this something a little more serialized? And
you want to take that one?
Yeah.
We talked about it.
Yeah, we definitely talked about it. We had to leave so many beautiful moments out of it to get it down to the 90 minutes. But there's a lot of details that we left out that equaled the same thing. Basically, he would try to manipulate them, or it would be another incident that would basically get you to the same point that these stronger moments came to. So that is really how we got it down to the 90 minutes.
And we also wanted it to be very, it's a challenging movie. Everything that's on the screen is incredibly challenging to watch, and having it be in a shorter sort of time frame, I don't know if it makes it more consumable, but at least it's over now, right?
It's like ripping a Band-Aid out.
Can you imagine watching another hour and a half or 4 hours of this?
Up until fairly recently, I mean, when we first announced our first 7 titles, this film had a different title that we announced under. It's called Forever Be. Just tell me why you decided, because this has been, you've had that title for about a year, and why did you change it?
Yeah, so Forever Be, titles have been very elusive for this film, and we've gone back and forth, and we've talked about, I don't know, you should see our lists of different titles. It was Forever Be for a long time because we kind of felt like Forever Be gave a good sense of the ripple effect, really, that this man has had even after his death on everybody's lives, and how long he has stuck with Jan. I mean, even that last sentence that she says, that she thinks about him every day, and both of her sisters do, and the parents do. And at one point, Bob, they were sitting around at Thanksgiving or something, and he said, is he ever going to leave us? Are we ever going to be rid of him? And I think the answer is no, that they're never going to be rid of him. And so he will, or his actions will affect them for the rest of their lives. And so that's why we had sort of settled on Forever Be. And then we've decided to change it. We've been talking with distributors, and we haven't signed a contract yet, but they feel that more people will watch it if they know what it's about. Forever Be was just a little bit elusive and opaque, and nobody really, some people said, oh, I thought I was coming in and I was gonna watch a romance movie. Like, oh my God, I'm sorry.
Forever Be is certainly makes you curious. The title you have now is certainly more provocative, and it's more like a headline. Yeah. So I agree on that point. I definitely agree. We have a microphone set up here. If anyone has any questions, please just line up. But my last question is, what is it you would like people thinking about when they leave this movie? Like, what are not necessarily message, but like, what do you want people contemplating and thinking about?
I think really our goal has always been to start the conversation, and I would love for people to go out and talk about child abuse more, and not be stigmatized by it, and not be afraid to talk about it, and not be silent. What I would love for people to do is take this movie out, talk about it. I mean, if you're angered by it, or saddened by it, or frustrated by it, or sorrowful because of it, I think all those are great emotions to be having. But I would just like for people to kind of look at the situation, look at their own situation, think about their children, and if something feels wrong, recognize that and do something about it, and talk about it.
I also think, everybody watches this movie through the lens of their own experience. So if you grew up in the 70s, you watch this differently than people that are, millennials now. If you have child abuse from a family member or a close friend, you realize it's not black and white. And a lot of times you can't just cut these people out so easily. So I think just being more aware. And also, we were at another film festival. Jan is an actress, and a guy was her director on a commercial, and he had no idea that her life had been this. And so just having compassion for people, you never know what they have gone through. Compassion for situations, and starting the conversation for sure.
All right. Yes.
So one of the things I thought was, obviously you've got a set of material that you're working with that's true. I was interested in the film that you didn't front the fact that the parents and Jan are, as unforgivable as some of those mistakes are, that they're doing as much as you could ask of a person in terms of trying to make amends and being public and publishing a book and frankly participating in this movie as you could ask them to possibly be to make amends. But I was interested that I felt that you let us hate them. When there's a moment in the film where someone in the audience yelled, "What?" And I thought that we went through the film not knowing that. And did you think about fronting ahead of time that these were people who had owned and embraced and tried to make amends for what had happened? And why did you make the choice that you did to let us hate them until the last 5 minutes of the film?
Because I think everybody has a choice how they feel, and there were certainly cuts where the Brobergs weren't in as positive a light as they are here. And it's interesting because I think that your, or many people's sort of hatred towards them is valid. There are as many people who feel very sorry for them and see the manipulation. And I think it's similar to what Stephanie talks about, and we kind of deal with this, or we experience this through our own lens. And I think that there's a certain approach to filmmaking, and I feel like if I had started the film with some sort of a disclaimer or something that said, I don't know, it's okay, these people, you're gonna like them at the end, or maybe you're not gonna like them at the end, but maybe you can feel sorrowful for them, it would have changed our experience of the film. And so I think that's really a lot of what that decision was. And also, I mean, when we approached it, we were very much interested in sort of unpacking and sort of, you know, peeling that onion away. And to do that, you know, you had to kind of have a sense. I mean, part of it too, look, there was a time when we said, do we hold off on seeing Jan? And I'm like, no, we've got to see Jan at the beginning, up front, because I don't want people thinking she's dead, or, you know. And so there were certainly other things that we sort of did from an editorial sort of standpoint that kind of let us off the hook a little bit. But I agree with you. I mean, it's easy to feel these conflicting emotions for them. And I think the choice was to really kind of keep you on this terrible ride that they were on too.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, I just want to say congrats on such a frustrating yet powerful film. I was wondering, what about the story led to the decision to include dramatizations of the people within the story?
Yeah, I think it was really, I mean, when we were first talking about this documentary, I said, well, it's really a historical documentary. I mean, this happened 40 years ago. And I think we made the decision pretty early on to use the dramatizations, sort of begrudgingly, honestly, because, I mean, both of us had sort of said, oh my God, dramatizations, they're always so cheesy and hard to pull off, and how are we gonna do this? And we just didn't have, or we didn't feel like, I mean, we could have done, there was talk about doing animation, and that could have been, we could have done that because there are children involved, and I feel like we could have found a way to animate. But we made the decision pretty early on that we wanted also to try to come up with a way to transport the audience back to the 1970s. And the dramatizations to us, shooting them on 8mm film with a home movie camera and trying to get them to look like home movies, we felt was a pretty powerful sort of device to kind of pull people back to the 70s. And that was a lot of the reason behind the dramatizations. And we just didn't have that much to kind of put over the interviews, really. It was a practical choice as well.
And I think also just seeing a little 12-year-old girl with a 30-year-old man in video just really brings it home. Pictures are one thing, but when you see the difference in their size, I think that helps as well.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
I should also mention, your background is in cinematography, so it gives you a chance to play with different film stock.
Oh, I loved it.
Yeah.
Thank you, first of all, for sharing your art with us and for telling worthy stories and being heard. One question I did have once the film finished was just wondering about Gail, his wife, and his kids. Just like what happened with them, and I don't know if that's something you guys know and you left out. If we were talking about the time of the film as well earlier, if that was just a choice time-wise, or if you guys just didn't really get that full story.
Yeah, we were able to find Gail and all of the children. They were not interested in doing interviews with us. They feel like this part of their life is something in the past and they'd rather leave it in the past. We were able to speak very briefly on the phone with Gail and Berchtold's wife, his second wife, but they weren't interested in doing the story. We were actually, I feel like we were quite lucky to get Joe Berchtold to agree to an interview because we weren't sure if he would, and I felt like I wanted to hear that side of the story and somebody that experienced B in a different way than how the Brobergs did, and so I was very happy that he agreed to do an interview.
Just a follow-up question with him, since you brought him up, was he was a character. What was it like interviewing him?
Crazier than what you just experienced. I think Stephanie...
I sent pictures of the address license plates. I was like, you don't hear from me in an hour, like call the cops. This is where we are. Like, come get us. We're in trouble.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Hello, long time listener, first time caller. I felt like this movie was the parents knowing that there's a monster in their closet and saying it's okay, let him be. So I'm curious if ever you thought when talking to the parents, or to Jan for that matter, because Jan was also going through a very tumultuous time, pre-pubescent, all this jazz, if ever you felt that any of them, just not with what you saw on the screen, but if any of them was lying.
Yeah, there were a lot of times where I wasn't sure. And we came up with like a system. It was our truth system, right? And we were like, okay, so how do we, and I don't know, I mean, is it lying or is it a memory, a 40-year-old memory? And I know I've been in the position before where I've told myself a slightly altered version of how something happened enough times that I begin to believe it. And so I think there was some of that involved. I think there was just, I know that Jan has blocked a lot of her experiences out, and so she had to talk to her mother and try to get that back. But the lying bit was interesting because our truth system really became, if they're telling us this, the first person is telling us this, and if we can match that to the court documents, the court transcripts and the documents that happened at the time, if those two things correspond, then we can check the truth box for it. The one thing that I always struggled with was, are the aliens real? Yeah. And there was part of me that was like, maybe I don't care if they're real, because if this is her coping mechanism, I'm okay with that. But there was never any proof of that until...
Dun, dun, dun. We were contacted by the woman who he was accused of rape of a child and spent a year in jail. Her mother was a psychiatric nurse at a hospital, head psychiatric nurse, and he kidnapped her as well and used the alien tapes on her. And she basically, without Jan prodding her, told us the same thing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
Yeah, guys, thank you. So, okay, so you said you haven't signed a contract on a distribution, but do you think we'll be hearing soon something about?
Yeah.
When
hopefully,
and where? And, yeah.
Hopefully we'll be hearing soon. And if you wanna keep track of where the film is going, our website is ABDUCTED.com, and you can sign up for our newsletter. We don't send out very many of them. We won't bug you with them, I promise. But we'll keep you posted on kind of where the film is going. And I think, our hope is to get it out there to the world, but I think our hope is also to get it to small towns and to do some more sort of grassroots kind of. I'd love to get it into churches. I'd love to get it into criminal divisions in universities and women's studies groups and abuse organizations, and to get it to these audiences that could really benefit and have these type of conversations afterwards, because honestly it's this kind of stuff and it's these conversations that are really the most helpful in understanding how it happened and just to sort of talk about it.
Yeah. And if you liked it, tell the world you liked it. It can't hurt. It can't hurt.
I have one more
Yeah,
thing.
sure.
If this was triggering, or you know a victim that might be seeking help, my sister, she looks just like me, she's way back there. She works at the Awakening Center. It's a couple blocks down. They deal with trauma therapy, trauma victims. So if you are seeking help or know someone that might be looking, find her. She has cards for you.
Awesome. Thank you both so
Thank you,
much,
everyone.
very much.